How to win with money. Have you wondered, are you taking advantage of all the planning opportunities, the roadblocks and avoiding them, as well as maximizing your army of dollar bills? Man, come one, come all, this is the episode for you to spot check where you are.
It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Did I bring it, Bo?
No, I think that was awesome. Like, so, here's what's great. We always do these like sound checks before, like, check, testing, 1, 2, make sure the levels are good. And then you went full on. Who was Bob Barker's? Who was the guy that called him down?
Don't ask me questions I don't know the answer to.
That guy. You did all that guy, and it was fantastic.
I prefer to say, I'm Johnny Carson, you're Ed McMahon. Has nothing to do with Price is Right.
Nope, nothing at all. Bob, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Hey, welcome to the Money Guy Show. Thank you for tuning in. MoneyGuy.com. Also go subscribe on YouTube as well as all of our other social media connections. This really is going to be an incredible episode for you. If you've ever wondered, where do I fall in with my age group? Now, I know we've done something similar to this in the past, but I got to tell you, this is new and improved. Instead of being in beta, this is actually a full release because we've even perfected. I will say the word perfected. Is that too bold?
No, I like it. It's bold, but I like it.
There's a formula, and you guys kind of picked on us. If you're a 20 or 30-year-old and you've often wondered, how am I doing financially? I think we've got some answers for you. And I think I haven't seen anything else like this out there on the internet. And here's what I think is cool, Bo, and I'm going to give you credit. Is we know there's all kind of formulas out there. You can talk about withdrawal rates. You can talk about multiples of income.
Right.
You can talk about even the Millionaire Next Door formula. But they all underappreciate my younger people, the people who have the most opportunity and most opportunity to benefit. We're going to fix that in today's show. So here's what we're going to do, because this is going to eventually get broken into highlight videos, so I have to make sure that we set this up, is that each one of the age sections, 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, and 60-year-olds, we're going to tell you planning opportunities. We're going to tell you roadblocks or things you need to try to avoid. We're going to tell you how to maximize your army of dollar bills, hopefully also get you very excited and motivated about the process. And then the last thing is that spot check, that part where we're going to take, what are people your age, what are they making?
Yep.
And then also, based upon that income level, where should you be? This is going to answer all those questions. So I think a lot of you guys are going to be able to watch this episode and just really know where you are in your financial life.
Because a lot of times we ask the question, if you're someone who's financially independent, you've already retired, you're already in the decumulation, you're kind of there. Mm-hmm. If you're not someone who's there, the question you always have is, where am I? Am I on the curve? Am I ahead of the curve? Am I behind the curve? This episode today is going to tell you exactly where you are relative to your peers, and you can even do some math for yourself to determine, am I where I need to be? And if not, what are the things I need to do to get there?
One more value add feature. If you're one of those people, you're a 20-year-old, 30-year-old, but you have a friend or a mentor that's maybe in their 40s or 50s, and you're going, well, how do I compare with somebody who's older? We've got that answered for you, too. So lots of bonuses in this episode.
I'm going to throw one other thing out there, Brian. This is one, we actually are going to talk about some stuff today. You're like, holy cow, that's awesome. Holy cow, I loved it. Holy cow, I wish I had those numbers. We are going to actually put together a deliverable for all the subscribers to our email list. Now, we're not going to put this on the website. We're not going to blast it out. But if you're an email subscriber, you'll have access to this where you're going to be able to know exactly what age you are, how you should think about looking at your net worth, and how you should think about calculating where you're going to be when you retire.
And the wealth multiplier of how hard your money should be working. So go to moneyguy.com, give us your email address. We will hook you up. So let's jump into this. 20s, open canvas, limitless opportunity. I don't say that lightly, by the way. I don't care who you are. I don't care what background you come from. If you are in your 20s, the sky's the limit.
That's right.
I mean, I really want people to get excited. And here's the other thing I've been thinking about. There's not a better time to be a young saver and investor than any other time. Think about like myself. I'm in my 40s. Don't mind sharing that. When I started saving money, you had to worry about all the alphabet soup with mutual funds, A shares, B shares, C shares, because no loads were just kind of starting to catch traction. Nobody was indexing when I started saving money.
And it was kind of hard even back then to do it on your own. You kind of needed a broker.
Asset allocation was hard because you didn't know, because my first investment was a bank fund. Mm-hmm. I should have been buying the S&P 500, but there weren't target retirement funds, there weren't the S&P 500 type things. You didn't know about all these things. And by the way, costs keep just dropping like a rock. I mean, we have seen costs go from 2%, 1.5% internal expenses, plus usually some kickback fees, to now you can actually buy a zero fund from Fidelity. That's incredible.
Zero.
I mean, I'm just telling you, best time to be saving money and building wealth. So get excited. Don't blow this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You're going to find out your time from 20 to really 40 is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Treat it with the respect of something that's so powerful.
Because the thing that you have on your side that your 30-year-old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old, and 6-year-old counterparts don't have is not earning power, not how many dollars you have in the bank. It's time, which we're going to show you is your most valuable resource right now.
Let's talk about planning opportunities, though. We're going to go through these pretty quick because we got a lot to cover. Your big, hairy, audacious goal when you're in your 20s, if you want to know planning opportunities, you got to get your savings habit to 15 to 20% of your gross income.
Now, we've done this before, Brian. We'll go talk to a group of college students, or we'll talk to somebody who's like recently early in the workforce, and we say that, hey, you should be saving 15, 20% of your gross income, and you just see some mouths open. Just, how do I do that? How on the road to do it?
Because you have this problem when you're young and starting out. You have time, but money's kind of in short supply.
That's right.
I get that. So that's why I tell you, I didn't give it that title of the big, hairy, audacious goal without some thought. I know that it's going to take time, and we're going to talk about that when I get to the Army of Dollar Bills in a section. But at a minimum, start saving and putting it to work. And then it's okay, look, while you're funding that goal, make sure you have some emergency money. Make sure you're taking advantage of the employer match. That's free money. If you want to push up your percentages, count that employer match. And then last, Roth IRAs, tax-free growth. Because remember, when you're at this stage, and I'm going to talk about this in greater detail, 95% of your future wealth, if you're in your 20s, 90 to 95% could come very well from the growth, meaning the compounding interest, not from your back, your hands, and your brain. That's powerful. Making it tax-free is even more powerful.
You said something to me in show prep, Brian. I know you're going to say this again, but it's amazing. In your 20s, your money works way harder than you do.
No doubt.
The truth.
So you don't have to do a lot. You just got to do a little and release it and let it go to work. So let's talk about the next thing I want to tell you, because with a financial show like The Money Guy, we're going to talk a lot about financial decisions, but there's also, this is the time in your life where you should focus on what's your personal capital worth. But give us some discussion on what young people should be doing.
Yeah, the thing you have to think about is you have to discover what your passions are, what career vocation you want to move in. What are you here to do? What were you put on this earth to be in charge of? And you need to work towards that and go towards that. And you can't be scared to invest in yourself. That maybe that does mean going and getting education, or if you're in a certain field, going and getting credentials. But make sure that you do it wisely, because one of the roadblocks we're going to talk about in a second is you can actually handcuff yourself by investing in yourself with investments that don't have great rates of return. So you have to make sure you do that wisely.
Yeah, this is the time though to invest in yourself. Go out there and figure out what your passion is, but also look at the market and see where those things intersect. I think there's a lot of opportunity with that. And here's the other thing I always tell, and I got this actually from a podcast listener who's now a client, is that we were talking about his successful children. How did he create successful children? And I always loved how he shared. He said he told his kids, go out there and figure out what you do better than 95% of the world. Or I think the way he put it is you're the top 5% of the world. And the example he gave was like, a beautician, somebody who cuts hair. You hear that and you're like, well, how much opportunity does a beautician have with cutting hair and doing hair? And he was like, well, but if you're top 5% and you're the hair, beautician for stars, you're driving the Lamborghini. I mean, there really are. I don't think that you making a choice off of just what you're good at, if you're world class at it, success tends to just kind of happen for you. So find out what you are world class at, and then cross-reference that to trends that are going on. Like there's articles out there about actuaries. There's trends out there about,
coders,
IT, coders. There's all kind of things. And finance. I mean, how could we not talk about finance? If there's some intersection of your passion, see if those things can work together, and I think you'll help yourself out. I want to transition to roadblocks you should avoid when you're in your 20s. The first thing, and we kind of hinted at this, student loans.
Yeah.
Look, I just told you, you're like, Brian, you're speaking out of both sides of your mouth. You just told me it was okay to invest in yourself. But there are limits. You do not want to rack up a bunch of student loan debt.
Right.
That's why you really need to kind of pay attention to what is the potential of the career I'm seeking while I'm in college. So if you're thinking about like a teacher probably coming out of school is in mid 30s to mid 40s,
Sure,
depending
that's
upon
it.
which region
Where
of the
you live,
country
yeah.
you live in. It doesn't make sense for you to rack up student loan debt that exceeds that first year anticipated salary.
That's a great rule of thumb. Your student loan debt should not be more than your first year of salary. I mean, that's kind of a good
So you
benchmark.
don't want to come out of school with a job that's going to pay you $40,000 in your first year out that you have $120,000 worth of student loan debt. Now, of course, professionals like our doctors, you're probably going to build up some six-figure debt, but that's a whole nother thing. But in general, pay attention to how much your rate of return will be on your career, and then that can be a good guide for how much debt's appropriate.
And investing in yourself means more than just going to college and getting another degree or going and adding on. Investing in yourself may be taking a different internship or trying a job out for a while or just taking certain courses, not actually pursuing a degree. There are cost-effective ways that you can hone your craft and expand your skill toolbox without having to rack up big tickets.
Credit card debt. Oh, man. You know, and I've told y'all the stories. Back when I was in college, coming out in my 20s, it was, you saw lines of people getting free bags of potato chips or a free t-shirt
That's what I
as
remember.
long as they signed up for a credit card. Now, the rules have changed, fortunately, where I don't think you see those potato chip stands as much. But still, people, please be cautious when you're signing up for credit cards. Be careful about the way you use credit card debts. If you're not paying off your credit card every month, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, I had a family member that you know, when they first kind of discovered credit cards and they first discovered financing, they always operated on this assumption, well, I know how much money I have coming in a month. So long as I can afford the monthly payment, that
No.
must mean that I can afford the thing that I'm buying. Well, what you do is you get yourself in quicksand that you can't get out of. It's not about, can I afford the monthly payment? That's a horrible, horrible trap to fall into.
I'm going to talk in a minute about your army of dollar bills, and I'm going to use an aggressive growth rate for a 20-year-old in there, say around 10%, because
Yep.
that's the S&P 500. You're going to find out that the predatory rates that your credit card company is using can be higher than 20%. So with that understanding that credit card companies are charging twice what you could even expect to aggressively potentially make on your investments, shows you what a horrible deal credit cards are. So if you can't pay it off, if you're not disciplined enough, this is one of those things, treat it like a very sharp knife.
Yep.
If you don't trust yourself with that sharp knife and you can't pay it off monthly, you might even just want to kind of defer this a little bit. Be very careful of credit cards. Same thing, and this is kind of in the same token, use your auto loans.
Oh, man.
Man, I have stories of guys who came out of college with paid-for cars, went into great careers, and went and bought a sports car, or what they perceived as a sports car, and the insurance payment was more than the car payment just because they were young, a boy or a young man, and then driving a sports car. So I'm telling you guys, auto loans, because it's not just the new car purchase, it's all the incidentals,
That's
but
right.
then auto loans, and I give this guidance all the time, but I think it's worth repeating on this show. You really need to try to structure. I don't mind you doing a 48-month loan, but you really want to have a car paid off within 36 months. But when I say that, when I give that general 36-month rule, I'm talking about normal cars. I'm talking about your Hondas, your Toyotas, cars that you're going to get you from point A to point B. As soon as you move into more premium brands, when I'm talking about, the BMWs, the Lexus, the Teslas, and things like that, if you can't pay that car off in 12 months, I think you might be jumping the gun a little bit. And I know that's going to rub some people the wrong way, but you do not want to fake success too soon.
I think that's such a great point. Look, we're car guys. We've got a whole series out there on Teslas. If you haven't watched it, go check that out. But if you are someone in your 20s, we're about to share a number with you in a second. I want you to think about how much the money you're paying for that car really cost you. Because I'm going to give you a little spoiler here. It's a lot more than just MSRP.
Well, yeah, because you're trying to get too fancy too soon. I think a lot of people want people to perceive them as successful, so the tendency is you fake it.
Yep.
And let's go ahead and transition. Let's talk about the army of dollar bills. What are you walking away from?
Oh, hold on. There's two more things I got to say because this
Okay,
one in the
go ahead,
20s,
go ahead,
this
go
one in
ahead.
the 20s drives me nuts. Here's one of the roadblocks that I see in the 20s. And
See,
this
I didn't
one,
mean to step on and moving in there, but I think I know where you're going, and I'm glad you stepped in.
This one just because so many times we see folks, and we live in a world that has limitless opportunities, just like you said. And the internet is sort of this unbelievable place where you can go get knowledge and you can set things up and you can establish things. So it is easier now than ever to think that you should be further along in your career than maybe you should. Maybe I should get out of college and go start a business. I've got all the education. I just should go become a business owner. Don't discount how valuable in your 20s it is to be able to put in 10,000 hours.
Well said.
To be able to hone your craft, to be able to truly become an expert in that thing that you do.
Build mastery.
That's
and
it.
that, a lot of times, like I'll tell you, in the world of finance, you don't want somebody who's green handling your money in the first 2 to 3 years that they've been doing this, because they're going to make mistakes. They don't know the psychology. They don't know the behavioral stuff. They don't even just know how market cycles kind of impact you as a person. A lot of you guys with the recent volatility, you might be experiencing that for the first time. We got a call from a client today who's the younger type of client. You guys who have never had a downturn since, because it's been since 2008, 2009. There's a whole group of people never had a downturn. So, and it's the same thing with work and experience. You don't know what you don't know until you build a little wisdom. That makes me sound like an old fuddy-duddy, but there's a reason that 10,000 hours or 5 years worth of experience is so powerful to building mastery and becoming an expert in your field of study.
I love it.
Did I get enough so we can get into the army of dollar bills?
Now let's talk about the army of dollar bills.
Army of dollar bills. You've heard, guys, 20-year-olds, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And let me give you the example. I told you guys that one of the reasons that I am who I am now is because I had an economics teacher in high school that let me know if I just save $100 a month, I'd be a millionaire. That turned on a light bulb. And then I read The Millionaire Next Door, I read The Wealthy Barber, and they turned on more light bulbs. And I was like, because coming from not much money, I just assumed only rich people came from rich people, not realizing that is actually upside down.
Total fallacy.
Most wealthy people are self-made. The number is around 85%. I think going back from that show we did with Sarah, going back hundreds of years, the research shows that it's been over 80% are self-made. It's just a cycle of the human condition. So how do you do this for yourself? Here's a financial fact that you can figure out yourself mathematically. Is if you were a 20-year-old and you want to know what $1 can turn into, what's the potential of $1? Let's assume you invested in something simple like the S&P 500. This is a hypothetical. Realize as you get older, you will get more conservative, but a hypothetical for what the potential is. Take a $1 bill, you invest it in the S&P 500, and it makes 10% per year annualized. You do this all the way until you're 65. You just let that $1 and just let it go. You could do this theoretically with the zero fund at Fidelity.
Absolutely.
By the time you retire at 65, that $1 is going to become $88.
$1 at age 20 turns into $88.
88 times over growth, guys. Think about if you did that by $1,000. Think about if you did that by $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, or $5,500 like you could do in the Roth IRA, or $6,000 in the Roth IRA. And it's just incredible. That's the power of compounding interest. Do not blow this opportunity. And here's the other thing I'll tell you. If you're trying to figure out what would it take to be a millionaire, I mean, even if you just if you want to get close, if you were saving, I think I did the number on another show that we're doing. It was something like $88 a month. I thought that was kind of poetic how it worked out to be around that. It gets you right under $900,000 a year with these same growth hypotheticals. What I thought was interesting, this is a person only saving $1,000 a year for 45 years. If you do the math on that, 45 times $1,000, that's a $45,000 investment. To be worth right under $900,000, that means 95% of the growth, the value, was the growth, the compounding interest.
Your dollar worked exponentially harder than you worked.
Do that in a Roth IRA, completely tax-free. Powerful stuff. Powerful.
So a lot of folks have this thought, Brian, where they say, okay, well, I just got out of college. I've been broke the whole time, and now I'm making money. And I'm not going to worry about saving right now in my 20s. I'll probably just wait till my 30s. I'll wait until I get there. And by the way, when I'm 30, I'm still going to be young, right? So it's still going to be pretty good, right? That's kind of the mindset.
That is the type of mentality where you're discounting the juice. You are discounting the juice of what your money at your 20s can do. Check this out. We did the math on it. Your money in your 20s versus your 30s, a 20-year-old versus a 30-year-old, your money is worth 283% more, meaning that, think about this. Here's the way this math works. We know $1 could turn into $88 by the time you're 65 for a 20-year-old. Right. You're going to hear in a minute that for a 30-year-old, the same $1 only turns into $23.
Think about how big that gap is in just 10 years.
So if you put the 88 over the 23, you quickly recognize that there is about a threefold difference, or the growth potential is 283%.
That's right.
Your money is worth that. If you do it by a 40-year-old, because maybe you're one of these people that says, guys, I'm living for today. And you're a 20-year-old, but you go, I'm going to put this off. And unfortunately, this happens, guys, where 20-year-olds turn into 30-year-olds, and they turn into 40-year-olds, and then they wake up and go, uh-oh, should I be saving? And they, I'm going to retire in 20 years. Here's the problem, though. That 20-year-old versus a 40-year-old, there's an 1,104% difference between what their dollar. So all you poor 20-year-olds, if you want to make yourself feel better, I want you to recognize there is 1,000% difference between you and a 40-year-old. So all these people you're looking up to are in their 40s. You're like, gosh, I wish I had. You very well could have more than they have if you will actually put the money to work.
Do exactly it. Right.
You're in your 20s. Maximize this. So let's now spot check them, Bo. Where should they be in their 20s?
So I think the first thing you have to remember, because we used to do this wealth formula, right? You've heard us talk about this all the time. You take your age, you multiply it times your income, and you divide by 10. We've always put this disclaimer on there that it's weighted towards older folks. It's weighted towards folks that are 40 and above. If you're someone young, it was just unrealistic. It was too difficult to grasp that. One of the things that we were talking about is when you're in your early 20s, you're still kind of on the runway.
Yeah.
You haven't actually taken off yet. You are still kind of getting the speed up for you to be able to launch.
You, the individual, might, I don't know who you are, but I'm going to assume you're watching a financial podcast and you're part of the Money Guy family. You are a diamond, and you're going to turn into something truly incredible. But here's the thing. You could be, and I make this analogy tying it into what Bo was talking about. You could be the fastest plane in the world, but until you reach that speed on the runway to get liftoff, where you can pull back and it actually takes flight, you're a plane is a bucket of bolts and metal and an engine or a jet attached to it until you actually get that runway and get to lift speed. So we got it. The first 5 years is you got to get to 20%, 15 to 20% savings rate of your gross wages ASAP. I know that it's going to be hard in year 1, it's going to be hard in year 2, but by year 5, I'm hoping you've, through discipline and sacrifice and understanding the power of deferred gratification, you have reached that goal so you can get liftoff. So then that leads to phase 2, Bo. Let's spot check where you should be.
Yeah, so we don't like this problem of having problems that go unsolved. So we said, this formula we've been using for years and years and years and years, there's this huge gap for 20 and 30-year-olds. So
it stinks for those under 40.
How can we fix it? So
we
came up with the math, and I'm looking directly at you right now. We came up with the math to do this. So if you're someone who's under 40, this is the new way that you calculate your wealth score, where you should be.
I feel like it ought to have a drum. That probably, audio-wise, that was horrible, but I think it proves the point.
Morpheus just took his headphones off real quick. You take your current annual income, you multiply it by your age, and then you divide by...
Here's the magic.
10.
Pixie dust.
Plus the number of years until you turn 40.
So let's do an example.
So let's say that you are a 29-year-old. So we're going to kind of give you that litmus test of where you should be at the end of your 20s. If you go pull the Bureau of Labor Statistics, average income for ages, the average income for a 29-year-old in the United States right now is $41,288.
So this data gets updated every year. We went and pulled the most recent data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So keep going.
So if you take 29 years old and you multiply it times $41,288, and then you divide by 10 plus the number of years until you get to 40, which was 11, so divide by 21, you would get $57,017. So here's what we just said. If you're a 29-year-old and you make $41,000 a year, your net worth by the end of your 20s, if you want to be just an average accumulator, should be just over $57,000.
It's pretty powerful.
It's pretty powerful. But that's not Money Guy financial mutant.
We want you to be a mutant. We do. Right. We want you to be one of those people that people go, he makes being successful look so easy. So we want you to, and I know, look, I understand as we go through these numbers, you in the 20s, you guys out there in your 20s, this is the hardest, to be that financial mutant that actually has twice the calculated goal. But we feel like we have to give it. We want to give you stretch goals so you feel motivated to go do it. To be that doubling of the number, it's actually 114,000. And if you're married, if you're married and you have two working individuals in your couple, that number does push up to 228,000 right as you're about to cross that threshold of being a 30-year-old.
That's right. So that's your 20s. So there's your goal. Your goal by the end of your 20s should be to have 2 times the formula we just gave you. If you want to know how you stack up to your peers, if you want to be on that financial mutant side, if you have 114,000 saved, you are well above the curve of your peers.
And I don't want to I want to emphasize, give us your email address, go to moneyguy.com, type in your email. We are going to have a deliverable so you can actually go do a line item check, a data chart by age, so you can spot check where you are. And then I don't want to underestimate the value of the multiplier and the formula of knowing how you should do based upon your personal income. Remember that formula, the modified formula we came up with was you take your age, time what you make, and then you divide that by the sum of 10 plus how many years until you reach 40.
That's
if
right.
you will sum those up and then divide it out, you're going to find out that this is much more favorable for our hyper young people who are out there really rocking the world. Do not blow this opportunity. Let's talk about 30-year-olds. I get a visual when I think about this one, Bo.
Oh, okay. I love
the door's cracked. Do you knock timidly, let me in, opportunity, I need in. Or do you Chuck Norris this thing, or maybe it's more like Passenger 57, Wesley Snipes, and you kick the door down?
I was thinking like King Leonidas, when he kicks the guy into the hole, 300. That's the kind of kick I was thinking.
That's pretty cool. It's got Nine Inch Nails music in the background,
yeah,
so I can get
like
on
that.
board with that. So the door's cracked, meaning that when you cross the threshold of becoming a 30-year-old, that crucial period between 30s and 40s, I think you're starting to figure things out. We talked about, when we were talking about 20-year-olds, we talked about get your 10,000 hours so you can become an expert, so you get mastery. I'm going to assume by the time you reach your 30s, you're starting to get some of that stuff figured out. The only problem with your 30s, oh man, this happens so quick. Life starts getting complicated.
Just a tad.
It just happens. I don't know why it happens, but it does. All of a sudden, you decided you were going to buy the farm, so you own a house.
Maybe have a few kids.
You found somebody you loved, and you've gotten married,
Yep.
and then from that love, you've created some little tricycle motors.
Maybe you got some more community involvement. You have more responsibilities at work. Maybe you have more options through work. Things are complicated.
So things are complicated, but then also I don't want to lose sight of the fact that this is still, because I talked about, if you haven't seen it, if you're a 20-year-old that's catching a look of what your future will look like in your 30s. We talked about 20-year-olds have the easiest opportunity to take advantage of compounding interest.
Right.
But here's the good news. If you missed your 20s, 30s is a great time. You're still getting double-digit exponential growth on any dollar you put to work, and we're going to go deeper into that. But I first want to kind of stop and focus and talk about planning opportunities.
Yep.
What are 30-year-olds? What should they be focusing on? First, let's talk about cash reserves and risk management.
We just said your life gets more complicated now. It's not just you alone. You have people depending on you. If you're someone who's married, or if you're someone who has kids, or if you're someone who has parents depending on you, whatever the case may be, if there are folks depending on you, you got to make sure you have your emergency reserves.
Yep.
And then you have to make sure you have all of your bases covered from a risk management perspective. So that's 3 to 6 months emergency reserves.
Yep.
That's life insurance,
Yep.
disability insurance, estate documents like wills and healthcare directives and powers of attorney. You got to make sure you have those base of the pyramid items in order.
So let's peel off a few of those layers. So first thing, I think wills, if you have children, if you do, that's somebody that's counting on you. And look, I get it. It's such a odd horrible, dark conversation to have with somebody. But if you think it's hard while you're living, let the state have it after you're gone. I mean, it will be a disaster. So go ahead and figure out what you want to have happen to the children. Lay those expectations and plans out in the will. And then the second thing is, life insurance. You have to be careful with this one because I've talked about you have now reached the level where you got a few things figured out. You're probably starting to have a little bit of financial success. Right. People can sniff or smell. They won't sniff. They can smell a little bit of financial success, and that's where life insurance salesmen will start showing up.
Yep.
And I would tell you to be careful because your biggest goal is you want to replace income and obligations. You're counting on that your assets will be growing, so it will be hopefully over time a decreasing need to replace your income as you build financial independence. So we do we like term insurance.
Yep.
It's cheaper. Our general guidelines try to get enough term insurance that will carry you past when you think you'll be financially independent and have the kids out of the house. And take into account any outstanding mortgages or debts that you might have as well.
The real loose rule of thumb, and we're actually working on this. This is something we've been working on for a while, but the loose rule of thumb is you want to have about 10 times your annual income in term life insurance. Just like you said, there's some things that come into play there, but that's a nice sort of real easy baseline to kind of think about in terms of what you should have.
Here's another planning opportunity. How about living on the wild side?
Whoa! Hold on. Did CPA, accountant, same haircut since 3rd grade, Brian Preston?
Do you want to know where I am a wild man? Besides in my Tesla going 0 to 40, because I'm a demon from 0 to 40. The other part where I look back on my life and go, man, what a freaking cowboy is go start a business or do something crazy where you move. This is the time, I think, in your early 30s. You could do it also in your late 20s. But it is that time where you can walk on the wild side, and the fact that there's some crazy risk. It's better to do it young than it is to do it old. That's so if you're thinking about changing careers, if you're thinking about moving to another part of the country, if you're thinking about starting that business venture, this is the time to come up with that crazy thing. And the big thing, and Bo hinted at this in the 20-year-old series, is you got to be an expert. So make sure you don't bypass the 10,000 hours. Make sure you also don't bypass the planning. A lot of us have hopes and dreams, but if you're not writing it down, if you're not planning, if you're not measuring twice, cutting once, it's a dream. It's not a plan. So even though I'm telling you, go take the risk, go make the jump, you only do this like a CPA, like me, where you've measured twice, cut once, done spreadsheets. You've done this thing within an inch of its life, and you have you just know within your heart and your soul that this thing is going to be successful, so you're going to go attack it.
That's exactly right.
So let's now talk about wealth deconstructed with what's your human capital. You should be, you're now past the stage of just basic education, but you can invest in your human capital still by trying to find a mentor. I think this is so powerful.
If your 20s was all about the potential that you had, your 30s now becomes that area where you just begin recognizing that potential and begin actually stop thinking about what you could be and actually becoming what you're going to be. I think that's what the 30s do. And a mentor is just an amazing place to do that. Found someone who's done the things that you want to do the way you want to do and is where you want to be, and just drink up everything they'll give to you.
Yeah, you don't have to. You can benchmark them. Instead of you reinventing the wheel, it is great to go find somebody, because I think it's going to exponentially help your success.
That's right.
I will, and look, Bo, I'm going to selfishly say, I think our relationship, I have no doubt you're going to be able to catapult where I was at your age, just off of the fact that you know a lot more than I knew, because I was still figuring it out.
Of course.
You're going to leverage that knowledge and essentially take it to a whole nother level. And that's exciting stuff. And by the way, it doesn't have to be a peer. I think a lot of people think when you see mentor, you think it has to be a boss. I will tell you guys, when I started my first version of this company in 2002, I met somebody I saw somebody speak at a conference, and I was bold enough that I approached that person and actually developed a relationship with her. And she turned out to be a huge influence on the way I designed my firm, the way I learned how to make money. I mean, there's a lot. Her fingerprints are all over the mentorship of that. So it doesn't have to just be a peer. And, Bo, you've even joined a professional organization that helps.
I'm a member here in Nashville of an entrepreneurs organization, and it's just been amazing talking to guys that have started businesses, built businesses, sold businesses, and then done it all over again, and just learning from all the things that they've been able to do and able successfully do. And it's just a group of like-minded folks. It's amazing how much value you can get from those folks, even if they're not in the same field or same age or from the same part of country or have the same education. Just surrounding yourself with those people can be unbelievably valuable.
So open up your ears and open up your heart for any opportunities that might be coming your way. So let's talk about financial roadblocks. You got to keep. We told you you're probably crazy enough. You went out and bought the farm. You probably have bought a house or a townhouse or a condo, something. You got to keep that mortgage within check because lifestyle creep is a real legitimate thing, and one of the biggest ones is you're buying your house. Try to keep that mortgage 25 to 28% of your income, so you're not house rich, life poor.
That's right. And, I think one of the things that a lot of folks in their 30s, once you've kind of started to have some success, you start to think about stretching and getting out there. And there's some merit to that. We've done shows on that in the past. But you just have to be careful how far you stretch because there are the things you want to become and the places you want to go and the things you want to be. But until you're actually there, there's a time and a place to be able to do those things. So you might not be buying your dream home at 32 years old. I mean, maybe you are, but that's a kind of counter to the way things actually work. So make sure, did you already say 28% of your gross income is where you want your housing payment to be?
It's not worth faking it. And then I think it's also, before we kind of move on to the army of dollar bills, is those life things that we've already talked about under planning opportunities. Guys, they really are roadblocks too. If you are not checking those boxes, looking at the estate documents, the wills, the life insurance, they can be huge roadblocks to your future. So be very careful of that. Disability insurance, I don't know if we mentioned
That's
that.
a huge one.
Umbrella insurance, those are things. If you don't know what those are, we've got resources. Just go to moneyguy.com and
search the archives. They're in there.
So let's talk about army of dollar bills.
Is it so bad? This is the part I get the most excited about on every one of these.
I know, because we actually let people know where they are financially. Remember, your 20-year-olds, man, that's the easy money. That is easy living because your money is doing all the heavy lifting, hard work. It's 90 to 95% growth because it's 88 times over if you're a 20-year-old that starts out. But guess what? You 30-year-olds, you're not leaving it behind. There's still potential, tremendous potential, especially when you compare it to your 40-year-old and your 50-year-old peers out there. You still, every dollar you invest, and let me tell you what I'm putting into this. I'm assuming $1 investing in, it's a little more conservative than that 20-year-old. Now you're only making 9% per year, not 10% like the 20-year-old.
Right.
So you might be doing a target retirement fund that's still aggressive. But if you did a compounding of 9% rate of return, and you did it for the next 35 years for a 30-year-old, so you're really going to 65, you have the potential to turn $1 into $23.
That's still incredible.
It's awesome.
It's not 1 to 88, but it's still 1 to 23. But here's what I get so excited about. Let's say you're someone that's listed in your 30s, and you did that thing in your 20s that you were supposed to do, and you saved in your 20s, and you turned it, and you turned it, and you turned it, and you're that person we said that was a nice average accumulator, and by 29, you had $57,000 saved up by the time you turned 30, right? That was what you had saved up. You realize that $57,000, that work that you have already done, by the time that you get to age 65, will be worth $1.3 million without you having to save one more dollar.
And all you did there was take the $57,000 and did it by the 23 multiple.
That's exactly right.
That's powerful stuff. You're a millionaire off of what you did in your 20s.
That's exactly right.
Letting that money do the heavy lifting.
You just said something beautiful. What you do in your 20s alone can make you a millionaire. Forget what you do in your 30s.
No doubt.
Forget what you do in your 40s. What you do in your 20s alone can make you a millionaire. That's incredible.
Easily. And the other thing, here's the thing, I think a lot of you guys, because we hear from you, we work with clients all across the country, and a lot of you guys are hyper savers young, and we love it. If you want to know who gets us excited, it is our clients that are these super hyper savers that come to us in their early 30s, and they already have several $100,000 accumulated. Remember what we said previously, just to review, a person in their 20s, you need to be focusing on the act of saving, the behavior of saving more than where you need to put those savings. So we recommend doing something like a target retirement fund, a low-cost, index-driven target retirement fund. I do think when a person gets somewhere between $200,000 to $300,000, you focused on that behavior of saving, but now you're starting to build up some assets. I mean, once you get to $300,000 of assets, you're like a CEO of an operation.
Yeah.
Congratulations. You might want to have, it's time to step up and hire a CFO or somebody to give you a second opinion or just somebody to bounce ideas off of. And that's where you can start moving past the target retirement funds and maybe consider going with worried about asset location, asset allocation, your risk profiles. There's all kind of things that will go into that and how they integrate into, do you want to retire early? Do you have some crazy bombastic goals that you want to do, all that stuff can become custom. And that's why it might make sense to go and see if there's some opportunities to work with somebody that's out there professionally for you. Let's also talk about another strategy that I love to focus for my 30-year-olds, dollar cost averaging.
Oh, man.
We were at lunch with somebody today, somebody I think the world of. And she was asking us for guidance on, hey, I've got a huge bonus payment coming in. How should I take advantage of this? How should I use it? And one of the things, after we talked about cash reserves, after we talked about do you have the money, set aside for car,
Future
house
big
purchases,
expenses,
big expenses. Now, that chunk of money that's left, since it's still a large sum of money, dollar cost average. It's not just for large sums of money too. What it does when you dollar cost average, it helps you out with volatility.
That's right.
And just because we've had some here recently, especially with large sums of money, if you want to go in, because a lot of you are like, yeah, but you should have lump sum it. We've done a whole show on that. Go check it out in our archives. But I also like the fact that dollar cost averaging is a behavior. If you'll just get addicted to saving and investing, you become an empire builder. It's not just large lump sums of money. I want this to be a cash management type plan where every dollar in your army of dollar bill has a purpose and a mission, and you're actually putting it out there to work for you so it can do that heavy lifting for you. So work on that forced scarcity and that cash management plan where every dollar is doing something for you.
So we did this thing where we said, okay, the 20-year-old might say, I'm not going to start saving to wait till my 30s. And we talked about how much more valuable a 20-year-old's dollars was than a 30-year-old's dollars.
Yeah.
Let's do it again, and let's talk about the 30-year-old versus the 40-year-old. How much more powerful is a 30-year-old's money than a 40-year-old? Just one decade separates them. How much more powerful?
If I did this for you guys that are wired like me, where you need some coping mechanisms, you might be a hyper saver. You're checking all the boxes, but and this is just a fact of finance, guys. There's always going to be somebody who has more.
Yep.
So I'm trying to give you some tools to help you equalize, to at least know, that person who's 5 years older, 8 years older, 10 years older has more, but maybe they didn't have more when they were my age. Because I think there is a coping tool that you can use there. So let's understand this. A 30-year-old versus a 40-year-old, the 30-year-old's opportunity is still 214% better than the 40-year-old, meaning that dollar, and let me break this down for you. Remember, a 30-year-old by the time they're 65, that money will have multiplied 23 times.
That's right.
A 40-year-old, that number drops down to 7 times. So if you see that factor, it quickly builds up to where it's almost, you have the potential to almost make it 3. Well, you do have a chance to make it 3 times, but the growth potential's 214%.
That's right.
If you look at the 30 versus 50-year-old, it's your money when you're in your 30s, the opportunity is 712% more powerful than your 50-year-old peers.
So that's a great thing, Next time you're at home for a holiday or something like that and you're going to talk to one of your uncles or your relatives, just go let them know how much more powerful your money is at your age 30 than their money is at their age 50.
It's not really a tool for bragging. It's more of a tool for coping and knowing where you stand with things. So, but that does lead us. I want to kind of talk about, let's now spot check, where should you be in your 30s? Now, here's the thing. This is new since the last time we did this type of topic. Fidelity has actually done some research. I don't know that I completely agree with it, but this is the Money Guy Show, and we like to give you multiple facets and avenues. So they have this cool little diagram, and I'm going to send this over to Morpheus so he can make sure he does a better screenshot than this. But it basically shows for their first stop on this rocket ship ride. They use the rocket ship, I'm sure, to show how explosive your growth potentials are. They want you to blast off towards retirement. That's the title for this. When you're 30, your first goal or stop on the rocket ride is you want to have 1 times your salary.
Okay.
So if you compare that to what we did for a 29-year-old, I hate to back us up, but we had said somebody who makes
$41,288.
They need to be around $57,000.
That's right. So a little bit more than
off.
1 time.
We're a little more. We want you to have more money working for you. But I do want to share that 1 times is there. Let's talk about the Money Guy Wealth Index.
Okay.
Review, Bo, once again, we have perfected, that's right, I used the word perfected, the old formula, which was age times income divided by 10. Talk about what we did again.
Yeah, so if you're someone who's not at least 40 years old, that formula just doesn't work for you because you didn't have the time. So
Ticks you off. If you leave troll comments is what happens.
So here's what you need to do. You need to take your income, multiply it by your age, and then divide by 10 plus the number of years you have until retirement. So if you are a 30-year-old, you take 30 times your income divided by 10 plus 10, so a number of years until you're 40. So you divide by 20. So by the end of your 30s, or by the time you get to age 40, where should you be? Well, if we go back to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and we look at the average income for the average 39-year-old in this country, the current average income is $50,492 a year in annual salary. So if we take 39 times 50,492 and divide by 10 plus 1, or 11, your net worth at age 39 should be $179,017 if you just want to be on the curve, average accumulator of wealth.
But we're mutants. We're financial mutants. We want you to have twice that much. So you'd be at 358,000.
That's right.
And if you're married, meaning both of the spouses are working, that number might be 716. So a lot of you guys are like, wow, that's somewhat aggressive.
Yep.
But I'm okay with that. I do think that, and I don't want to undervalue that adjustment to the formula. You guys that are 30, 31, 34, 35, you're going to be like, I love this adjustment because it's going to give you much better perspective and it'll probably cut down on our troll comments by a factor of 10. I have no doubt whatsoever, but I love this automating and looking at where you should be saving. And this ties in, I remember, and I've shared these in the past, my goals, when I reached 30, I wanted to make $100,000 a year. When I was 40, I wanted to have 7 figures of liquid capital.
Yep.
Now, I came short on both of those by about a year. So I think, but I love that formula. Came really close. You know, coming in at 39, right at $700,000. That's getting close to that.
Sure.
Trying to reach 7 figures liquid when you're 40. I think that's a very aggressive goal, but I think it's a doable goal if you're one of these people that's willing to focus on saving early. So do it often. Focus on it, because if you do the hard work when you're young, and by the way, Bo and I did tons of research for this show that's going to lead into even more content. We really did find that 20 and 30-year-olds, you are the easy decision makers. If you will make the commitment and the sacrifice when you are in your 20s and 30s, life gets a heck of a lot easier as we move into this next part of our show, which is the 40s, 50s, and 60-year-olds. So let's talk about 40-year-olds. Oh, man. By the time you're 40, Bo hears this all the time, because you're not in your 40s.
Not just
I'm
yet.
Unfortunately well into my 40s. We're over the halfway point at this side. You do have the potential to be a world changer. I like to think what we're doing here with the Money Guy Show, doing all this, I really am having an impact of helping people understand how money works and being effective. But you've also, here's where it's in conflict a little bit. You're past the gladiator stage.
Right.
You're not a warrior anymore. And the fact that, I remember when I was a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, I thought I wanted to conquer the world at all costs. And then when you get in your 40s, you get all sentimental.
Yep.
You're like, I still want to make a difference, but it's for a different reason now. I actually want to do something positive, and it's not just to take scalps. Now it's, can we help and mend and make people realize the value of what they're doing? And I think that's a powerful thing, because this is the age, I will tell you, when you reach your 40s, I think if you've done it right, you avoid the midlife crisis, and you probably actually recognize the value of generosity because you're so grateful for all that hard work that happened at 20s and 30s and the good things that happen. It is a turning point. You just hope that you came out on the positive side of those early decisions that need to happen. So let's talk about the planning opportunities for 40-year-olds.
I love the first thing that you wrote down, Brian, and I use that language very purposely because that's what you wrote down. Make sure that your plan is actually recorded, otherwise it's still a dream.
It's true.
In your 20s, it's okay to be a dreamer. It's okay to have these big visions of where you want to go. In your 30s, even, you can still do that. But by the time you get into your 40s, you need to kind of have your plan pinned. It
Yep.
needs to be down on paper so that you actually have something to keep you accountable.
And I didn't use the word, and when I was doing show notes, I didn't use the word retire on purpose. I don't like that word retire because I'm one of those people, I love what I do for a living. I want to be financially independent. And I think even when you hear people talk about the FIRE movement where they're trying to retire early, I don't even know if they all want to truly retire and sit in a hammock every day.
Right.
I think a lot of them just want to have the flexibility, to basically go live life like they want to go work in a different avenue or something else and use their resources elsewhere. But it is one of those things where by the time you reach your 40s, you need to know the when, the where, the why, and the how, because that plan's not taking shape unless you're actually putting numbers and dreams to pad and paper or spreadsheet so you can actually start making some measurements on
right.
it. So I also ask you, the planning opportunity is, are there some specific things you need to be setting up with your family? I put some fun stuff, but I'll tell you, once again, me focusing on myself and the fact that just because life breeds wisdom and experience, I didn't count on that in my mid-30s we'd have a special needs child. Of
course.
That having a special needs child that you just don't know if they'll ever be able to live on their own, take care of themselves, creates a financial obligation that I don't think a lot of people have to think about. But there are people out here. So you might have we all have our struggles and things. So I tell you, look at your financial situation and make sure those things are built into your plan.
That's right.
I mean, are you putting things, because that's a real world life example, but it also could be something fun.
Yep.
Like you've got the desire that you want to take the whole family, your kids, when they reach 25, you want to take everybody to Australia.
Yeah.
Why not go ahead and start planning for that now in your 40s?
Maybe when your kids graduate college, you want to take each one of your kids on a special trip somewhere to commemorate that big life achievement. You got to kind of start planning for those things because they're kind of big.
Education. I think a lot of us understand education is that gateway, that bridge to success. So you need to start building that education plan for your clients as well. And this is also... This is one that's going to bring a lot of... It's the cold water spot check. And the fact that in your 40s, when you actually make sure this plan, you double check this plan, you can know whether or not you need to push the accelerator further down on your savings because you're like, oh crud, I'm a little behind, we better save more. Or I will tell you, if you've listened to what we talked about in your 20s and your 30s and the activities you should do, you could have the exact opposite effect. Maybe this is where you get the opportunity to take your foot off the accelerator a touch and live like you told your spouse you wanted to. I will full on confess, I probably would have to give up my tightwad card in my 40s. Don't you? You've known me for over a decade, Bo. I've always been very tight and good with my money, but in my 40s, not as much so.
I think we had this conversation, and we actually did this for some of our clients, kind of thinking through their situation. Said, okay, if they're 40 years old, and we take just what they've saved thus far, right, just what they have in their current portfolio, and we multiply it times a wealth multiplier, the thing that we talked about what your money could turn into, realistically, those clients or those individuals we're talking about, they wouldn't even necessarily have to save any more money because they did the hard work in their 20s, in their 30s, and so now they could pull their foot off the pedal. Now, most people have other goals. They want to fund and stuff, but it's so incredible to be in that situation, to be able to do that. Not everyone's in that situation, and we've had this conversation before too, where a lot of times in the 40s, you still have a good 20, 25 working years left before you hit that magical 65 age. If you need to put your foot on the accelerator,
this is the time.
This is the time because you actually still can do it.
And this is, that's a great segue into the financial roadblocks. What are the things you need to be thinking about? The first thing I had put down was just don't let life happen. I'm always amazed at how many people are not taking an active role in this, and I always get this visual of you're creating your own film. You're writing your own transcript of your life. You get to determine if this thing is going to be a horror flick, a slasher film, a drama, or it's going to be a love story, or it's going to be, you got to use your love story, or some inspirational,
that was his Barry White voice, guys.
or your inspirational adventure. These things, I'm telling you, be an active player in the role you are creating for your life. You don't just let life happen. The other thing, we did a whole show on this too, Bo. I love when we've been doing this long enough that we have shows you can go look up in the archives and watch the specifics. Keeping up with the Joneses.
Oh, that's This happens. I mean,
Yeah.
this is a real problem that we see. Brian, I've heard you say this time and time again. Stop swimming upstream if there's no reason for you to swim upstream, just for the sake of swimming upstream.
I will, and this is a cautionary tale for a lot of you guys out there. You're watching a financial show. You are successful. You will have to make a decision: is how much is enough? You know, on like house size, type of cars, and those type of things. Because here's a truth of life type thing: as the poorest guy on the nicest street in America is not the happiest guy on that street.
That's right.
That is a fact. So you do not want to be the poorest person in your neighborhood. So pay attention to those things. Maybe you don't need to go buy the bigger house.
That's right.
I mean, watch that lifestyle creep. Watch what, we all have some form. Pride is not a healthy thing, but we all, unfortunately, it's part of the human condition, that behavior is you worry what other people think of you.
And Brian, I think this is another this is a financial roadblock, but maybe it's just even a life roadblock. And we both have friends that have fallen in this category. In their 40s, you start thinking about all the things that you didn't accomplish, or all the things that didn't happen.
When that part of that sentimental thing that I was telling
That's
you about.
One of the things that we think you should do in your 40s is remember to focus on the good things. Don't just think about I wish I would have, or this didn't happen, or I never achieved that. That can just put you into that dreaded midlife crisis. I mean, that's a real thing that happens. And those sorts of thoughts can lead to unnecessary spending, irrevocable career decisions, divorces, all kinds of things. Remember to take inventory of all the good things, of the things in life that are worth noting, that are happy. I know that's like soft and touchy, but I think it's important.
Well, I think the wounded warrior like myself, in my 40s, I can share with you that some of the best advice I ever had was be sure that you shepherd and kind of watch that inner voice of yours. It is more powerful. It can be the power that gives you exponential rocket fuel to be successful, but it also can play some crazy games with you, especially in your 40s, that you do some horrible things in your long-term life. So pay attention to that inner voice. Always try to have a generous heart and looking at the glass half full. That's the best advice. I know that's hard if you're maybe struggling with some things, because we all have those struggles, but if you can just focus and tend to that inner voice, I think it will serve you well. That leads us to, we go from soft to let's go to some hard numbers on what your army of dollar bills should be doing. So let's talk about, this is that chance when you're in your 40s, your money still has a multiple factor. I mean, I still love that it can start working for you. It's not doing what a 20-year-old can do or a 30-year-old, but it still has the opportunity for, if you figure out in your 40s you're a little behind, you have a chance to let your money do some of that heavy lifting for you. Every dollar that you invest in your 40s, now look, we've changed it once again, giving you the variables. Now you don't get 10% growth like a 20-year-old. You don't get 9% growth like a 30-year-old. You're probably going to get something like an 8%. Your diversified portfolio is going to start pulling down on in this hypothetical situation. So if you look at a 40-year-old that's making about 8% per year, your $1 bill by the time you turn to 65, 25 years in the future, has the potential to grow by a factor of 7. You can turn 1 into $7.
That's still huge when you think about it, turning it over 7 times. So again, let's go back to sort of the examples we've been given. If you listen to the 30-year-old segment, if you were that 30-year-old that accumulated $179,000 by 40, so that's just that average accumulator of wealth, if you saved no more dollars and you just had that $179,000 working for you from age 40 out to age 65, that sum alone would be worth $1.3 million when you retire.
It's pretty incredible.
Still a millionaire.
Pretty powerful stuff. And then I also, because remember that coping mechanism, if you're in your 40s, that thing called pride doesn't move away, where you're like, you see somebody in their 50s or 60s has more, and you're like, well, how do I rate compared to them? Let's talk about the juice that you have as a 40-year-old versus a 50-year-old. Your money at 40 versus a 50-year-old is 158% more powerful. And the way we got there is, remember, you have a multiply factor when you're at 40, it's 7 times. When you're 50, it only has the potential of growing at 2.8 times. So if you divide those two, you can kind of figure out how we came up with it. 40 versus a 60-year-old, your money at 40 is 444% more powerful on the potential of what it could become, thinking about those growth factors that we've already outlined.
If you have to put the foot down on the accelerator, this is the decade that you have to do it. So now let's talk a little bit about a wealth
spot check
perspective.
this thing.
Let's do the spot check. So I think it was at 30, right? Fidelity said you want to have 1 time your salary.
Yep.
Right? 1 time your salary at 30. Does it give a number or a multiple of where we should be at 40?
At 40, I want you to go from 31 times to 40. I want you to be at 3 times your salary.
So Okay, so if we look at the average income, again, this is now, okay, so here's something that changes. We said that we had a pixie dust formula. Formula reverts back to normal formula at 40 because now it starts to make sense. You take your age, you multiply it by your income, you divide by 10. No more pixie dust, you just do this simple thing. Well, if we go back to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and we look at the average income of a 49-year-old, so at the end of this decade, average 49-year-old in America right now makes $51,272. So if we take 49 times $51,272 and divide by 10, your net worth, according to the formula, should be about $251,000. Well, Fidelity just said you should have about 3 times your income, so that'd be about $150,000.
Yeah.
We're saying you should kick it up a notch. You should probably be about $250,000 if that's where your income is.
We want you to have a good retirement.
That's
Your
right.
financial independence. We don't want you. We want you to be able to go out to dinner from time to time and do annual vacations. This seemed, when I looked at this number, I was like, I don't know, because you're going to hear their ultimate goal is to get you to 10 times. I'll bring it up again in the future. I don't know about that.
I think we can do a little bit better.
So I think you can do better than that. So I want you to kind of really do a stretch goal and try to do what we're telling you to do and try to get that income up to 15, 20% of is your savings goal.
So if you want to be a prodigious accumulator, instead of 251, you should be at about 502,000. And then if you're married, and again, every time we say we're married, we're just assuming that both spouses make the same income, right? So what you really would do is you take your household income, multiply by your age. But if you both make the same income, then you'd want to be just over $1 million to be a prodigious married accumulator.
And if you're trying to figure out, this is the thing, when we modified the formula, we didn't mention as much, but this is all tying into the research done in the Millionaire Next Door. Once you're in your 40s and 50s and 60s, you do pay attention to that Millionaire Next Door formula and the prodigious accumulator of wealth. This will tell you how successful and if you're lining up the right behaviors so that you are building that financial independence.
If you don't listen to these shows live, man, this is awesome because right now there's a live chat going and folks are like, oh my gosh, I just did my number and I checked and I'm right there and I was feeling so behind, but it looks like I'm on track and I'm on paid and I've got enough saved and I'm able to retire. It's
This
just
stuff is
wonderful.
powerful. This is why you want to
so
spot
awesome.
check. I love our job because it's, you watch these home improvement shows and you see something that's a tear down and then within an hour show they turn it into something beautiful. This lets you guys know how much work needs to go in your renovation of your house. And for a lot of you, you're probably finding out, hey, I'm pretty spiffy
I'm
still.
doing what I'm supposed to be doing. That's
So let's talk about 50-year-olds. You are the money masters, and you're now in the opportunity to build a legacy.
That's right.
So here's where we think the planning opportunities lie. You got to fine-tune that vision plan.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that your landing gear's not down yet, but you can probably see the runway.
Yeah.
Like you're probably looking and it is on, it's no longer the horizon now, you know where you're going.
Let's see if we can pack as many visual cues in here. Instead of painting with broad strokes, you're now bringing out the little tight, getting those details in there. So it's really, this is where you really, bringing back to the reality of the financial side of it, you want to probably stress test. This is when you're trying to figure out how do you break your retirement? What does a Monte Carlo simulation look like on this? This is when you know if your dreams are coming true.
That's right.
Or if, oh my goodness, if we don't change something, we're eating cat food and potatoes.
It's so fun. There's a whole thread going on about what kind of dog food you could actually eat and survive in retirement. That's what's going on.
Is that really?
That's what's going on. in that chat
That's
room.
horrible. If you're a part of the Money Guy family, our goal is to keep you away from the Alpo. No doubt. Tune into this and you'll avoid the Alpo moments. That's what we're trying to avoid. But in all seriousness, you really do. You want to find out in your 50s that you're way off track rather than figure out at 65. Because I have, unfortunately, had those client meetings where I had a brand new client come on who they thought they were leaving work next month, and then I break the news to them, you got to work 3.5 more years.
What an awful thing to have your financial advisor say to you in like your first meeting.
Yeah, those aren't the fun meetings. It's more fun to say, guess what? It's going to be hard for you to transition from saver to spender. Go out there and spend more. We do, unfortunately, have to tell some people the bad news is your behavior doesn't match your lifestyle, so be careful with that. This is also the planning opportunity. Are you debt-free? Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't bring this up a ton. My younger people, debt, you're going to have a weird relationship. We didn't talk about it earlier for my 30 and 40-year-olds if you're one of those fire movement people. But when you're in your 50s, I think you do want to have the goal that when you approach the finish line of financial independence, whatever your date is, and some of it is going to be in the 50s for you, you probably want to be debt-free. And the reason I say is because if you look in the dictionary, independence and encumbrance are two completely different parts of the dictionary, so you need to treat your financial life the same way.
I want to speak. We have a close friend, Brian Michael, and he's out there listening right now. I know he is. So I want to put a small asterisk on there. We want you to be debt-free. Financial independence is debt-free. I want to go on the record and say that. But if you're one of those people who say, I'm never going to pay off my mortgage because there's arbitrage, yada, 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 I'm going to have money out there, you need to have the ability to be debt-free before you're financially independent.
I agree
Is
with
that
that.
fair to say?
Yeah.
If you're not going to pull the trigger and actually be debt-free, you need to be in a position where you could write a check to be debt-free.
I still will challenge. I think, now look, I get it at 50. There's still a huge opportunity for that money there's a multiplier effect on your money in your 50s. I do think once and we're not there yet because we're in the 50s, but when you get into your 60s, that multiplier effect becomes less powerful.
Yep.
And I think the peace of mind that comes from being debt-free is way more powerful than the multiplier factor. And so I would probably, I'm going to let a 40-year-old go on that point. I'm going to push back a little bit on a 50-year-old. 60-year-old, without a doubt, I think you ought to be debt-free. And I can't help it. I'm getting to be that age where I'm stuck in my ways, and I'm going to tell you the way I think.
You're going to get an email.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
We'll see. So, okay. So debt-free, we talked about that. This is also a great age to review risk.
Oh, that's so true.
Risk
so true.
is, I mean, this is the point where you need to figure out, there's a reason, if you're healthy, it's still, I'm getting close to my 50s, and I still feel young.
Yeah.
I mean, I still like to run, I like to exercise, and I think there's a lot of you guys in your 50s, you're feeling the same way. This is a great time if you are blessed with great health. Go celebrate that and go buy some insurance of some type, or at least go look at it. I don't want you to go buy unnecessary insurance, but this is the age where if you're concerned about who's going to take care of you when you're older, like long-term care insurance things, this is the age to go look at those things. This is also the time just to make sure that there's not you're probably your last stop on life insurance. You don't want to be buying life insurance in your 60s. So if you need a 10-year policy because maybe you had children later or something like that, this is still a time you can consider doing that.
You know, we talked a little bit about like health risk and that sort of thing. There's also a good time to revisit financial risks, even when you think about like your portfolio stuff. You know, we talk a lot in your 20s and 30s and even your 40s about risk tolerance. Tolerance. It really is in your 50s where the pendulum starts to shift a little bit, and it's more about risk capacity.
Yeah.
How much can you take, not much how much are you willing to take.
Because you might not have the years to recover.
That's exactly right.
You will, if you're in your 50s. By the way, we're going to talk about this in the 60s again. It's a bigger concern in the 60s, but in your 50s, you do need to start thinking about capacity because your risk tolerance, they're all interconnected.
Yep.
Your behavior, your ability to let your portfolio have the time to grow before you're pulling off those assets, all of this stuff is interconnected, and that's why if you are a CEO of a big corporation, and that's what it is, if you think about the value of your assets, you probably want somebody to help look over your shoulder and think about these things. So we talk about that. So now let's talk about, you're now getting close to financial independence. What's the next step? We did a whole show with Fritz on this from Retirement Manifesto. I love the steps he gave, so go check it out in our archives. But here's some catch you up tips is, how easily will you convert from saver, because realize we got decades of experience of saving money, how easy will you convert from saver to consumer of your assets? It's hard.
You spent your whole life doing one thing, and then all of a sudden this event happens, and you have to teach yourself how to do the exact opposite of that thing.
It's weird.
It's a weird situation to be in.
Yeah, but it's a good situation, but it's still something you need to pay respect to it. Also, is this one of those things where you're going to have a wild, woolly dream of hiking the Appalachian Trail, of doing something,
going on that riverboat cruise through Europe,
buying a mountain cabin or something like that? There's all kind of things out there. And this is, you talked about, Bo, this is also a time where you do some advanced planning opportunities. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so at 50, you're starting to think, okay, am I going to, if I am going to be a person who retires and goes into financial independence, am I going to do that at 55, 58, 60, 65? Well, if you are one of those folks, you have to start thinking, are there some other advanced planning strategies I ought to be thinking about? Whether it be like different types of retirement benefits like deferred compensation plans at work, or Roth conversion strategies to buy down your RMDs at 70, or age 55 401k withdrawal rules. There are some things you need to be thinking about and decisions you need to make in your 50s that will affect your 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and so on.
Sure. Let's transition to roadblocks. What are the things you need to be worried about? I've already told you, and I've kind of preached on this a little bit, debt.
Yep.
I think this is the point where you're not building debt, you're hopefully winding down debt. And this ties into something you've already talked about, Bo, with taking unnecessary risk.
Yeah.
I want you guys in your 50s, I want you to really, whether it's your 20s, 30s, 40s, or 50s, try to avoid those dumb doctor type deals. Deals that are so complex you don't understand them, or somebody sells you on some product that's just not appropriate for you and builds a lot of risk when you don't need it. One of the stories I have from doing this long enough is that we knew somebody back in Georgia that just took they'd made it, they'd won, and then to help one of their children out, they did a business venture and used all of their financial independence money for that business venture for their child, and lost it all. And it broke my heart. And look, you love your children, you want to do anything and everything for your children, but know where your limits are. Don't take unnecessary risk, especially if you've won the game. So let's talk about army of dollar bills. What should each dollar in that army of yours be doing? You still have the opportunity. You hear 50s, you're getting a little bit longer in the tooth. You're getting a little more gray in the hair. I have some of that too. Your money still can almost triple by the time you're 65. So there's still a multiplier factor there.
It's still powerful. It's still really powerful.
And there's also, you have the juice of your dollars. Because probably a lot of you in your 50s, appear in your 60s, and you're like, well, what is my money worth compared to somebody who's older than me? You still have the potential. Your money, if you compare the 2.84 divided by, over the person who's 60 and they only have the growth factor of 1.35, your money still has about 110% more power of growth opportunity than comparing yourself to your 60-year-old peers. So still some opportunities there for the 50-year-old.
So let's do the spot check, right? So we know that a 30-year-old ought to have, one time their salary, according to the Fidelity study. A 40-year-old ought to have 3 times their salary. What does Fidelity say that a 50-year-old should have to be on track?
It's a little bit bigger planet on your rocket trip.
Okay.
It's 6 times your salary.
So again, we went a step further. If you go look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, look at average income for Americans, the average 59-year-old, so the end of your 50s decade, right now has an annual income of $51,636. So if we take our wealth formula, age 59 times $51,636 divided by 10, your net worth at 59 should be $304,652. If you want to be average. If you want to be prodigious accumulator of wealth, so you want to be that mental financial mutant that we talk about, your net worth at 59 should be about $609,000. And if you and your wife each make $50,000, or as a couple you make $100,000 at 59, then your married net worth would be about $1.2 million.
Which doesn't surprise me. I think a lot of the research shows that when you're in your 50s is probably when a lot of people cross into that 7-figure period. So
That's right.
A lot of opportunity. The big takeaway for 50-year-olds is you have a lot of opportunity to fine-tune your vision and make sure you have that landing into retirement is everything you dreamed by making sure the plan matches the thoughts.
That's right.
60s. This is the new beginnings, guys. This is when you're transitioning. Here's the planning opportunities for our 60-year-olds out there. This is the time you execute on all those years of planning.
That's right.
You become a consumer instead of a saver, and that's completely appropriate. I know it will feel bizarre. It will feel so awkward to you, but this is the time when you're supposed to start using those resources. This is also when we'll give respect to Dave Ramsey. He has that saying that I love where he says, live like no one else so you can live like no one else.
Right.
This is what he's talking about. If you make the sacrifice, if you're disciplined, you understand deferred gratification, you do it in your 20s, you do it in your 30s, your 40s, and your 50s. By the time you're in your 60s, you're living a pretty rockin' lifestyle if you've done this thing right. This is also the time you need to measure twice, cut once. I always tell this to clients. This is one of those things because here's what all the stuff that happens when you get into your 60s. If you've been around and you're in your 60s, you might even have a pension opportunity. They're going to offer you a lump sum, or you go just start actually turning this into a cash flow stream, for the future. You need somebody to look at that.
That's right.
Only get to one choice on that, so you better measure twice. That's going to happen. You're making great income still probably in your 60s. Yep. And now you're about to go into something where your income's either going to go completely away or you're going to transition to something completely different. That's a scary, scary thing because there's a good chance that once you cross that threshold, you're not coming back to that same earnings number again. So make sure you measure twice, cut once. It's really important to make sure you get that stuff right.
I think this is a huge one. Have you taken inventory to make sure you understand those things that provide happiness and purpose at the office as well as at home? And we say this all the time, Brian. All the time people talk about they want to retire, they want to get to financial independence. And we always ask the question, okay, we know what you're retiring from or what you're trying to be independent from. What are you retiring to?
Yeah.
What's the vision? What's the thing that you're going to do? What's the thing that you want to pursue? You really need to kind of know that in the 60s because that vision, that thing that you think is what's going to become everyday life.
No, don't run from stuff. Try to run to it. Exactly
That's
what
right.
Bo said, because I think that is so much of you're trying to get away and you think the grass is going to be greener. Make sure you have a plan for entering. That's when we did that episode with Fritz, Retirement Manifesto. I loved how he talked about building aptitudes, skills, hobbies, and other things that give you fulfillment outside of what you're getting from your day-to-day office experience. Also, here's a big one we have to talk about, people. We talk about cash reserves. We can hear people say cash reserves probably all of your working life. You get the traditional 3 to 6 months of cash reserves. Guys, it's different once you're living off this money. Your cash reserves very much, it's all individualized, so this is not a recommendation. It's just an example. Your cash reserves might balloon up to 12 to 18 months of your living expenses. Or some people, I will tell you, we have some people who like to have 3 years of liquidity sitting in some type of cash variant or something that's guaranteed. We get it.
Earning money right now, though, not sitting earning nothing.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not making 2% on your cash reserves, I mean, guys, that's easy right now.
Easy money.
It's easy. I mean, I know that sounds odd because the last 10 years has been practically nothing. Go understand how cash reserves work and then maximize it. And then, Bo, I love this one. It makes me think of you.
Yeah,
Because you exercise.
I mean, obviously, you should have been taking care of yourself in your 20s, 30s, 40s. You don't need to stop in your 60s because something's already going to happen. If you leave the workforce and you stop using your brain the same way that you use it for your whole working life, there's just a natural transition that takes place physiologically. You don't want to do that same thing to your body where you just stop exercising, stop being active, stop doing those things. So make sure you take care of yourself so that you can actually enjoy the period of life that you've spent your entire life planning to enjoy.
Take care of your body, take care of your mind, take care of all the spiritual stuff.
That's right.
Guys, it's a we're so complex and lots of facets to us. Make sure you're checking all the boxes so you have the retirement that you want to. And then let's talk about the financial roadblocks, the things you need to be concerned about. I think this is a great point. When you are in your 60s, you should start opening the lines of communication with loved ones on what your desires are, also what you have. I know it's taboo to talk about your finances to family members, but guys, you got to start sharing at some point so there's not a big surprise on what you have going on.
Because just because you have a grasp of where everything is and what it is and why it's there and what it's doing, that doesn't mean that your spouse or your children or whoever you're leaving your assets to are going to know all those things.
And this leads to another thing, relationship with risk. We know a lot of you guys are probably cowboys. You can handle all the risk tolerance in the world, but risk capacity, as we've already explained, is your ability, just because you can handle the risk emotionally, doesn't mean that you have the years or the capacity for the money to grow back and make back in the time limit that you have on your assets. So make sure you understand the relationship of risk tolerance as well as risk capacity. There's a whole topic right there. And then a lot of you guys, you got to make sure your withdrawal rates are reasonable. I mean, that you go into retirement with the right expectations. And then here's one that's just a curveball. You can't know it's coming, but you can at least prepare for it, is know what impact, do a stress test, do a Monte Carlo simulation to know what impact would a bear market have on your first few years, because that is a worst case scenario.
That's the outcome you hope that doesn't happen, but it's a very real outcome that could happen.
So let's talk about what's the plan for your army of dollar bills. Bo, roll us into this. You can tell we've been talking for a while on this
So,
one.
if you're at 60 and you're thinking 65 is this traditional thing, you've really got about 5 years to bring it in for a landing. Your assets and investments may still grow slightly, but if you haven't done the hard work of saving, it's all up to you at this point because your dollars aren't going to work as hard as they have previously. $1 invested at 60 turns into about $1.35 invested at 65.
I've had somebody ask me the question, Bo, because we talk about investing and what's going on. I think some people, there's this misnomer out there that people think when you reach financial independence, your money should all go into safe assets. you're still going to have a portion of your assets set for growth. Because remember, your retirement, guys, this is what's awesome. It's a celebration. You probably got 3 decades to enjoy financial independence. And that's at a minimum. There's other advisors out there talking about how we're going to be living until 130 years old.
Yep.
That would be awesome if that's the case. We want to make sure that you're in a situation where your assets can continue to work for you. So it doesn't make sense to go to completely take all risk off the table. You just need to make sure that you don't lose sight of what's a healthy asset mix for you and your goals, your age, and your risk profile.
You said that perfectly, Brian. If you have 30 years of retirement, a portion of your portfolio has a 30-year time. A portion of your portfolio should look the exact same as a 30-year-old who has 30 years until they retire.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about that. So you have to have your portfolio structured that way. And you want to make sure you have a healthy mix set up that can last.
So here's the wealth perspective from Fidelity. They gave us 2 numbers because they know you're bringing it in, and they gave you, for a 60-year-old, they want you to have 8 times your salary. Mm-hmm. And then I guess this is reaching full when you land on the sun, because that's the biggest one. So it's got to be the sun, right? It's probably not healthy to land on.
Yeah,
it's just the biggest planet on the rocket
maybe that's not
tour.
my retirement goal
But
there.
then at 67, that's right, Social Security full retirement age probably is why they base it off that. They want you to have 10 times your salary.
That's great. And maybe that used to be okay back in the days when we had pensions and, then there was Social Security income, and there used to be a lot of other sources of income that we have. But a lot of those things, Social Security could be changing. That's up for debate. Pensions are sort of a thing of the past. They've kind of gone the way of the dodo bird. It's kind of up to us. It's up to you to be able to save and build for financial independence. I don't know that I would say that 10 times annual expenses is going to do it anymore.
Here's a number. Well, they said income.
Or 10 times your salary,
income.
sorry.
Here's what I recommend, or what the money guy take on this is that I would like you to have, and it's really driven by withdrawal rates. We want you to have 20 to 25 times your actual living expenses, what you think you'll need to live off of in financial independence and retirement, and then you can subtract from that number things that you know will be guaranteed income streams like Social Security, or if you have a pension, like a government pension or something like that. You can lower that number, but if you take that formula, it will give you a better understanding of how you're set up. And then, Bo, give us a spot check. What is the Money Guy Wealth Index say?
Yeah, so again, we stopped at 65. So if you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, average income in 2018 for 65-year-olds across America.
For working
65-year-olds, average income is $51,792. So according to our wealth formula, take your age, 65, times your income, $51,792, divide by 10. Your net worth at retirement or at financial independence, if you were making that much, should be $336,648 if you want to be on an average accumulator. If you want to be prodigious, it should be $673,296. And if you're someone who's married, so combined as a couple, you're making $100,000 before retirement, your net worth should be about $1.35 million.
Pretty incredible.
It's pretty incredible.
I think it all works out. And then, like I said, don't get freaked out, because you do probably have other income streams like the Social Security. Guys, I want you just to have a life well lived, well saved, well planned for, so you get all of your goals and dreams accomplished. There's so much opportunity for building wealth, being successful. You just have to take the time and put the resources. You don't get to be strong by not exercising. It's the same thing with your money. You need to exercise. And here's the biggest thing I want you to take away. You need your army of dollar bills to be working just as hard, if not harder, than you do with your brain, your back, and your hands.
That's right.
Guys, live the life that you want, but do it on your terms. And a big part of that is working, staying in the classroom of the Money Guy Show. And we're going to hook you up. So go to moneyguy.com. I want you to give us your email address so you can get this. We're going to email out our data table of where you should be so you can spot check. Also to see the multiplier effect of what your money should become. Moneyguy.com. Give us your email address. We're going to hook you up with some great information.
Maybe you're somebody out there listening and you're in your 20s and you hit these numbers. You're in your 30s and you hit these numbers. You're in your 40s, you hit these numbers. You're thinking, man, I really wish I had a team in place that could help me navigate some of this stuff. My life's getting more complicated, or I just want to know that I'm on track, or I don't want the benchmark anymore. I want something customized and specific to my situation. We have clients at Abound Wealth all over the country. We have the best team of advisors, I think, in the entire world here at Abound Wealth. So go to our website, moneyguide.com, contact us. Go to aboundwealth.com, contact us. Let us know a little bit about you and what you're looking for, and we'd love to talk with you.
Guys, I'm your host, Brian Preston. Mr. Bo Hansen, we'll talk to you soon.